Humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasankaran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Nyanis. Last week I started the Katha Upanisha, part 1. Today I'm going to do part 2, but I think it's good to review what we covered in part 1. So I think let's, see what we did the last time. So, and I started off with the invocation of peace and how before we start any spiritual practice or want to live a spiritual life, one needs to cultivate peace in our mind and also peace within ourselves and peace with people around us and in the surroundings. So we have to be at peace. If our mind is in a turbulent state, we see that it's very difficult to acquire that wisdom knowledge. So here, this invocation is about the invocation of peace. It is the source of wisdom, knowledge, and enlightened living. So what does peace means? It means that we have to cultivate patience. There are times that we don't get what we expect. We need to take some time to reflect back, introspect, and maybe, rethink and refine. So the patience is really important. If we have patience, we will have an inquiring mind. This is where the introspection, contemplation, reflection is very important. And the invocation talks about how we should cultivate patience and how we should learn and ensure that in my learning, I grow. In the learning of the others, also they grow and we mutually grow. And in that inquiring mind, we discover that power within ourselves, the power of the self. We become aware of it. And you see that when we cultivate patience and inquiring mind and the awareness of our own self, the mind becomes more concentrated, more sharper, more effective. And the other important thing is that when we practice this, we have a sense of compassion, and kindness. So you see that this is part of this invocation, having that kindness to ourselves and to the people around us, to nature, to the animal world and everything. So that, being that focused, but also at the same time having that compassion for everybody. And that's what leads to this enlightenment and enlightened living. So this invocation is to get us into the mood of being cultivating peace in our thoughts, in our words, and also in our actions. So this is what we covered the last time. So in this, we also looked at the different characters last week, and we saw Vajasravas, the father, very pious religious person, but focuses on form, but lack the substance. So the knowledge he acquired is very blunted and not effective. And you see that he lives an unillumined life. We also saw the characteristics of Nachiketa, which is values-driven mindset, where he imbibed all the qualities that he was taught, and he was an important observer of what his father was doing. And then the third character is, of course, Lord Yama, the Lord of Death. He's the illuminator. You will see in this story that he talks about death, he talks about life, he talks about self. So you have this person who is very much ritualistic and material. Then you have a much more younger person who's innocent, pure, but values-driven mindset. And then you have an illuminator. So this is what we covered. We also covered a few things in the last about how one can be doing a lot of spiritual, religious practices and very materialistic, but that doesn't mean that one would acquire that wisdom, knowledge of that divinity of God realization. So we covered the behavior of Vajasravas, what Nachiketa observed, and how the anger of Vajrastravas, he curses his son. So the key lessons from this scene is that religiosity versus spirituality, right? People can be very religious, but they need not be spiritual. So you can do all the acharas, that's rituals. But one, the rituals should lead you to a disciplined mind. And that disciplined mind should help us with respect to vichara, the introspection, contemplation, reflection, meditation, and the service mindset. So here you see the contrasting thing that in this scene. Also, we see that always ask questions, about our thoughts, our behavior, our speech, and our actions. And this is what Nachiketa was asking. Hey, this is what I was taught. This is what I do, but my father is doing something else. So this constant questioning is very important for sharpening our mind and our intellect. Also, in this scene, we see that we have to be very careful what we think, say, and do, because the epicenter of goodness and negativity start and end with us. And also, we see in this that uh, the parents are the greatest teachers of the children. What we do, what we say, and our actions has repercussions on our children. So this is the key lesson that we learned. And of course, Vajrastravas curses his son and tells him that he should go to the Lord of Death. He did it in anger. Yeah, I don't think he meant it, but there were consequences to this. So sometimes when we do things, we do it in an unillumined state, anger, or in a state of anxiety, and sometimes, and most of the time, we make mistakes. So always have that peace in our mind, the patience and inquiring mind that I mentioned earlier, to give us a better understanding of the state of play and the kind of decisions that we should take or not take. So this is what we saw. Then we also spoke about, remember, the father told him that you should go to the Lord of Death. I think he didn't mean it, but the son literally took it that the father has said that he should go, and hence he should go. Of course, the father regretted it, but Nachiketa is a boy that says that, you have to mean what you say and say what you mean. And he took it upon himself to go and meet Lord Yama. And when he went there, Lord Yama kept him waiting, or he was away. His guards and all kept him waiting for 3 days. And here again, there's a discipline of the mind that he didn't, blink his, he didn't sleep, nor did he take any food or didn't want to rest, because he was eager to know and meet Lord Yama and not be distracted. So this is something, another lesson that we learn, that a pure and innocent mind, is always, earnestly searching for this divinity and would not give excuses and so on. So we see that the key lessons, of course, we also covered that how Lord Yama was, when he came back, he asked, why is this boy waiting? And his guard say that this boy has been here for 3 days. And he said, who's this boy? Normally, people don't want to come here. We have to drag them here. But this boy came voluntarily, and he asked, is it the boy's time? And he says, no, not his time. He said, I'm really surprised that somebody is here without their time. So this must be someone very interesting. So anyway, the conversation started, and Lord Yama went to see him, and he realized that this boy, he's not an ordinary boy. This boy was someone with a pure and divine soul waiting. And Lord Yama says, that when that something very interesting for me is that Nachiketa, with a pure mind, an innocent mind, uh, walked upon to meet the Lord. And for me, that was a very profound thing, where when we have a pure and innocent mindset, we will always be given a chance to be in the presence of divinity, either in the form, if the divinity comes in the form of a guru, in the form of a book, in the form of a divine poetry that illumines us. So only the innocent and the pure mind will acquire this blessing. So this is a very important lesson for me. It would not open up for people who are so materialistic, or very vindictive, and have that 18 asuric qualities. So here, Lord Yama, in his conversation, said, no, actually, we should not keep people who are divine, the Brahmanas, particularly the people with Brahman, that means the mind that are pure and innocent, waiting. So here, for me, is that never keep the divinity waiting. Even Lord Yama, which is an enlightened person, realizes that he made a mistake. So this also was a very important lesson for me, that we should always keep the divinity present in our mind. When the divinity is present in our mind becomes a present for us, a gift. So here, when we are decoupled from the divinity, we are in a state of ignorance. Ignorance is actually sin, unillumined state. So that is a very subtle message, but yet very profound. So always, whenever we are very busy or we meet many people, sometimes our mind gets decoupled or distracted. Always bring it back. So here, this is what even Lord Yama, the great Lord, was concerned of, that he has committed sin. So what he says is, one who is in the presence of the divinity. So if you are in the presence of divinity, he says, to overcome this, right, I have to give you a boon, right? And I'll give you 3 boons. So for me, this is very important, that when your mind is pure and divine, you are blessed with many things. You're given many gifts. It is the gifts to test you, gift to see whether you will actually raise to that level, similar to all the tests that we get in our lives, right? So he was given, and you see later on that he will test Nachiketa. So one who is in the presence of the divinity, which means that the mind is constantly reverberating in the divine, the presence of the divinity, will always be positive, enlightened, and that in itself is a gift. And that knowledge of self and God realization becomes omnipresent. So the knowledge of the divinity is blessed by the divinity, because we are in the presence of the divinity. So you see in the scripture, there is a kind of awe that Lord Yama has for this little boy, that he came on his own. Nobody had to drag him. It was not his time, but he was, wanting to meet this divinity. He wanted to engage with this divinity and not be distracted by the worldly things. So for me, this was a very profound kind of nugget of knowledge, that, whenever we are in a state of turmoil and a state of, not so great, it means that we actually have stepped out. So when we know this, we bring back, be quiet, be gentle, be silent. Slowly, that confidence and that divinity starts showing up. And this is what this very important lesson. So that was a boon that we stopped. So Lord Yama gives him 3 boons, a gift for him. And I asked all of you all, what would you, if you were given, what kind of boon would you ask? Right? So here he said, I'll give you 3 boons because you stayed for 3 days. So for every day, I have to account for that sin that I committed. Right? So can you imagine, if you are 365 days have the divinity in present, the 365 days you have the gift of the divinity. So this is where we stopped the last time. So these are some of the lessons from this Upanishad that we covered the last time. So today I want to cover part 2, which is boon number 1. So I'm going to spend each boon, in every satsang we'll cover one of the boons, because each of the boons are very profound. So what would Nachiketa ask? And this is the part that is really important. This is page 17. So in this, he says to the Lord that, dear, oh, that please grant that my father Gautama may be free from worry, that he may be in a happy mood, that he may no longer be angry with me, and that when I return from my palace, my place, he may readily recognize me and greet me as before. Of the three boons, this is the first I ask. So he knows that his father is very ritualistic. He has a lot of flaws and blemishes, and the father, uh, I'm sure that the father must be very worried, very sad that the son has left. And you see that even though the father was very harsh on the son, he had the softness for his father. He also was very worried that the father was committing sin, that he may end up in hell. So that concern for someone else was a very important thing, that remember that you'll see a part of that service coming out. So here you see that he says that the first boon is that I want my father to be happy. I don't want him to be angry, and he should be able to recognize me and greet me. Now, something very profound in this is that whenever you go to the Lord of death, you never come back. Nobody comes back. So here he tells that my father must be happy, but also he must be able to greet me, which means that Nachiketa is also asking for him to be going back, because he was very innocent. He went there to meet Lord Yama because that was his duty. And then he says, look, once I meet Lord Yama, I have a few questions. And after I have the questions, I want to go back. And you'll see later on why that going back is so important. One is to make the father happy. Two is that actually that when he goes back, there is, at least he has the memory of having that conversation with the Lord of Death and explaining what death is. So this is the first boon he asked. So the next one is actually, if you see in the page, it says that he had, as this passage says, that he had so much love for his father, and of course the father would have been very worried. And he says that, I know my father has a lot of flaws, but make him better, right? So he says that free from anxiety, free from anger, all the 18 asuric qualities, please remove it from him. So, and also he was worried that when he comes back, he may not recognize him. So he says that because the father, he sent the boy, he must be regretting. He'd only be happy if he comes back in a wholesome way, right? So he says that, please allow me to go back, because that's what will give him happiness, and he will realize the mistakes that he made, and in the realization he will learn. So Nachiketa wanted that assurance from Yama about this in his first boon, that he wanted the father to be illumined, enlightened, happy, and also if that means that for him to go back in completeness, so that the father is in a better state, in a more peaceful state. So this is something, and I'll give you what that illumined message that comes out of this. So Lord Yama says, you can, you are now going back home at my instance. So he says he will be affectionate to you, he'll be cordial to you. But he says that while this, before I make the journey, while I'm here, he says that he will, so Lord Yama assured that he'll have a good sleep, he will not be displeased, when he sees you back, he, released from the clutches of death, he says that, he'll be very happy. And he says that, afraid that his father might not love him because, he went to the Lord of Death, and sometimes people, when you go to the Lord of Death, they are afraid when they come back. So he says, don't worry about that. He may not even be happy to see you back, but you're free from the death's hands. So Nachiketa was very worried that, the father must be spending sleepless nights. Like, I mean, most parents, when the children disappear, they have sleepless nights thinking, and they're not in a peaceful state. So he says, Lord Yama said, don't worry. I assure you that you need not worry. He'll be okay. So the son was a little bit more pleased that, okay, at least in the boon, his father's, peace and happiness will be assured. So then, so Nachiketa then says, great, if happiness is there, so there is nothing to be afraid of in heaven. He says, that means you are telling that my father will have all the conditions of happiness and joy in heaven. So he says, great, that's the boon I want. And then he says, okay, that means that there's nothing to be afraid of in heaven, which means that you're giving my father the heavenly qualities, because you've removed that 18 asuric qualities, and that he will be in a state of happiness and joy and in that heavenly state. So he says, that means that death have no influence there, right? He's asking. So there is no fear of old age, right? So he's telling, okay, so my father doesn't have to suffer, right? So hunger and thirst do not trouble a person. So he's telling him that you are now, giving him peace and happiness, that he will not suffer. So free from sorrow and mental anguish, he enjoys life in heaven. So you see that the boy is really smart in asking for the people that are suffering, particularly his father, to be liberated from this. So these 18 asuric qualities, when that disappear, you have the 18, divine qualities that gives him that heavenly. And he says that even if once he blesses that means even old age would not touch him. That means he'll be free and he'll enjoy everlasting life. So it is really profound for me that he's asking something for his father, and not for himself. But something very interesting, which is you'll see later on, is that in this, for me, that so Lord Yama has given him the boon, and the boon he's asking for his father, who has all these challenges and blemishes, so that he will be liberated and he will live a heavenly life. But what was really, when I thought about this very deep, actually Nachiketa was a very smart guy, right? Whenever somebody, dies, they never come back, right? Everything perishes. But this boy was very smart because he knew it was not his time. But while he was with Lord of Death, the illuminator, he wanted to learn as much. But the rule is that when you go to the Lord of Death, you don't come back. So he, in this boon one, of course, he gives his father that everlasting, heavenly life, but he also assured of himself coming back in one piece, in the way how he left. So in that one boon, he was able to accomplish two important things. So when he comes back, he now has that experience of meeting that illuminator that illumines him of death. And also later on, you'll see about self-realization and God realization. So he says, there's no point for me to be enlightened and not come back, but at least my father lives a heavenly life and he sees me. He can only live a heavenly life if he sees me complete, because that's what he will be worried about. But also that I now have this knowledge. When I come back, I can illumine others about what death is and what life is all about. So I thought this first boon has so much meaning for this. So here, what for me the lesson was very interesting in this first boon is that he had that compassion, peace of mind of others. Others here is his father, right? That compassion in him, that he didn't ask for himself. He didn't ask for enlightenment, or he didn't ask for that as the first boon. He says, my father was not at peace. I'm sure he will not be at peace because, his words have sent me to death. So the compassion is in. Remember, one of the things in peace is actually compassion. He also wanted to have a happy union with the father. because happiness actually is what enlightened living is. That means, it's nothing like a parent when they lost a child and suddenly the child is found in, healthy, and, the happiness is like, really amazing. So that happiness is talking about that enlightened, also we see that, in this boon, he talks about that kindness and compassion that leads one to be free, to free from the sorrow and the mental torments. And so we see this, that in this boon itself, there are so much message. But one of the other message is that he has had a chance to meet the Lord of Death. He's able to liberate the Father, but he has also acquired the knowledge, and he returns back to be of service to others so that he can illumine others. So the question I reflected in this boon is that sometimes we are in the presence of the divinity, and sometimes we don't know that. And my father used to say that sometimes goodness happens because you are in the presence of the divinity. So in the presence of the divinity bestows you many things, education, good life, a good family, knowledge, all those things. But how many people actually says that, okay, the divinity has blessed me with this and has given me this boon. What do I do with this? Can I liberate others with that knowledge, with that wealth that I've been bestowed, so that they too can be liberated? So this first boon for me was a very profound boon that sets the stage. Like, how you have a sacrifice, you have a fire that you're putting a sacrifice, and then you put the bricks layer by layer. So this is the foundational layer that teaches us to think about others, how whatever that treasure that the divinity has bestowed us, this treasure of life, treasure of acquisition of knowledge, and the 10 capitals of life, how do we liberate and help others to also know this truth? And in this statement, I remember my father, Guru Sangaran, used to say, in this boon, you can see the quality of Nachiketa. And you'll see that this is quality is what Lord Yama saw in this boy. It was not his time, but yet he came, he waited, he had the patience, perseverance, and persistence. And then Lord Yama gives him the boon. The boon is actually for other people, that I want them to be liberated, and I want this knowledge for me to go back in wholesome way to be able to pass this knowledge on. So this boon for me was, we have glimpses of that divinity. There are pockets of times that we feel the presence of the divinity with us and in us. And in that moment, we get enlightened, we get blessings, we do very well in everything that we do. How much of that we take it and share it with others, that blissful experience of the divinity. And that is what this first boon, which sets the stage for the mindset, the values and the mindset that this Nachiketa has. If we are selfish, the knowledge will not, even though we have the knowledge treasure, it will not reveal to us. Even though we have an opportunity to be with the divinity, the doors will be shut. Even though, may have all the wealth, we will not acquire that divine wealth. So, but we may not have everything, but if we have a pure heart and a pure mind, all this knowledge comes. As I said, the spiritual capital gives us the physical health capital and everything, the 10 other capitals, including the economic capital. So this is a very profound boon for me, although there's, small passages that covers, but it's a very deep blessing that the blessing that Nachiketa got, because that's what he asked, and he was not selfish. He was actually selfless. In the selflessness, you'll see that he will evolve to become a self-realized person. Thank you very much. Next week, I'll cover Boon 2 again with a very in-depth analysis. Sandosha.